Hello, how you guys doing? Hope you're having a good day. Hope you're having a good morning. Uh, well, I started out with this video. I was watching some interesting documentary this today, and I'm gonna start with a series. This is for the white people. I want you to look at this story because what I'm about to show you is gonna shock you. First, I'm going to show you about the sundown towns. Then after that, I'm going to show you what the repercussion of what being prejudiced, racist, or the system, those who are in agreement with the racist system, and what is the effect of the racist system. What's happening to white women, white men, white children. So if you're white and come across this video, you need to pay attention and warn others. Those of you who have spiritual eyes, those you pray to God reveals some things. I hope you open up your eyes on this one because this is something is coming to a town, whether you're a little small town in Iowa, whether you're a small town in here in Ohio or anywhere else. You need to pay attention. It's not a black versus white. No one's getting above this. But by certain people who choose to ignore racism, there's the consequences to this. First, we're going to do with the small town, and we're going to get right to the white people. Hold your seatbelt.
No witnesses, no arrests, just silence, and it's happening right now. Rashim's story wasn't an isolated incident or a tragic anomaly in modern America. Over the past 3 years, a disturbing pattern has emerged. Young black men are vanishing in small towns across the country. Towns where they don't belong. Towns where they're just passing through. It started with Devontae Morgan visiting Mount Shasta for a family birthday party. After an argument with his girlfriend, security cameras captured him entering a gas station alone. Then he vanished. The red flags were immediate. A girlfriend showing no emotion when reporting him missing. A broken phone that couldn't be tracked. When his family put up missing person posters, locals tore them down. 2 months later, a witness told his brother they'd seen Devontae climbing into a white truck. Rumors spread about the Chester River, about disposal of bodies. The police claimed they found no evidence, despite the witness testimony. The pattern repeated with Ticarius Ray, a 28-year-old rapper who moved across the country. His truck was found abandoned, his phone left behind on the passenger seat. Just like Devontae, he too was untraceable. The police waited a week before investigating, claiming he was hiding. 8 months later, still missing. Corey Danley trusted the wrong friend. After an argument in the small town of Kerman, he disappeared into the night. That friend, Zach Stiles, the last person to see him alive, mysteriously relocated to Hawaii shortly after. Almost a year later, no arrests. But perhaps the most disturbing case was yet to come. Shannon Riley, a 35-year-old father, was on what should have been a routine work trip to Kelso when his wife received a chilling call at 3 a.m. His wife heard muffled sounds, then a voice.
Go this way, go this way.
His hotel room was empty, the door unlocked. Security footage showed him leaving in distress. 1 week later, they found his body in the Cowlitz River. 4 men, 4 small towns, one pattern. Broken phones, mysterious trucks, uncooperative locals, and police departments more interested in closing cases than solving them. This isn't coincidence. This is something else entirely. But what is it? And how deep does it go?
Okay. So it's a sad case.
Welcome back to Ventureverse. Before we jump into today's deeply troubling topic, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're dedicated to exploring the hidden stories and truths in our society. And today, we're uncovering a shocking reality: sundown towns in America that still exist today. You might be surprised to learn that while many believe the era of segregation and exclusion is long gone, remnants of this dark history persist. So buckle up as we delve into the unsettling world of sundown towns, their history, their present, and the ongoing impact they have on communities across the nation. To understand the gravity of this topic, we first need to define what a sundown town actually is. Sundown towns are communities that historically enforced a policy of racial segregation, often communicated through unwritten rules or even explicit signs stating that black individuals or people of other races were not allowed to be present after dark. The term sundown refers to the time when the sun sets, indicating that it was unsafe for people of color to remain in these towns after sunset. This policy was enforced through social norms and, in many cases, violent reprisals, creating an environment of fear and exclusion. But why did these towns emerge, and how have they managed to remain relevant in today's society? Let's take a closer look. The origins of sundown towns can be traced back to the post-Civil War era, when African Americans sought to establish their lives and communities in the United States. During this time, many white residents reacted with hostility to the newfound freedoms of black individuals. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw a wave of racial violence, including lynchings and mob attacks. Many towns enacted unofficial policies to make it clear that they were whites only after dark. In the post-World War II era, as the civil rights movement gained momentum, sundown towns began to face scrutiny. However, many of these towns managed to maintain their racial homogeneity by fostering an environment that discouraged diversity through social pressure, and in some cases, violence against those who dared to enter after sunset. Despite the progress made during the 1960s and beyond, the legacy of sundown towns remains, and many continue to exist under the surface, often unacknowledged by their residents. Now let's take a closer look at some specific sundown towns that still exist today. Anna, Illinois is one of the most well-known sundown towns, and it has a long, troubled history. Although the town has made some progress over the years, many residents still hold on to the old ways of thinking. Dixon is another town that has a history of exclusion. The community has openly discussed its past, with some residents expressing discomfort with the idea of racial diversity. Lakeview is often cited as a modern-day sundown town, where the absence of diversity is noticeable. Many residents have reported feeling unwelcome or uncomfortable in the community due to its predominantly white demographic. Pana has a long-standing reputation for being unwelcoming to people of color. The town's history includes several documented incidents of racial violence, and while it may not have explicit laws, social cues continue to discourage diversity. There are many other towns across the country that still operate under the unwritten rules of sundown towns. From small communities in the Midwest to larger towns in the South, the remnants of this painful history can still be found. These examples serve as a stark reminder that the legacy of segregation is alive and well in many parts of the United States. The existence of sundown towns has far-reaching implications for the communities involved. The impact is not merely historical, it shapes the social and economic landscape of these towns today. Many sundown towns experience economic stagnation due to their lack of diversity. Research has shown that towns that embrace multiculturalism tend to have stronger economies and better job opportunities. Conversely, sundown towns often face challenges such as declining populations, limited business growth, and lower property values. Socially, sundown towns create an environment that isolates individuals based on race and ethnicity. This isolation fosters a culture of fear and mistrust, making it difficult for residents to engage with one another and build a cohesive community. Education is another area where sundown towns face challenges. Schools in these areas may have fewer resources and less diversity, which can affect the quality of education and limit students' exposure to different cultures and ideas. The psychological toll on individuals living in or near sundown towns can be profound. For people of color, the fear of violence or social ostracism can create a hostile environment where they don't feel safe or welcome.
Harold has metastatic prostate cancer, but like you,
Now that we discovered this, now you're going to see the repercussion of sundown towns in majority white places. And those white people who agree with the mindset, those who choose to look away and say, oh, it's just that, blah, 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 blah. You're just making something big. I'm about to show you the curse is coming back on you. Those who think like this. I'm about to show you. You're not going to like this. Watch this.
Our paper that came out in 2015 looked at the fact that after a century of progress on mortality, toward the end of the 20th century, mortality rates for white non-Hispanics in the U.S. started to move in the wrong direction. And this put us at odds with other rich countries. It put us at odds with the other English-speaking countries where in middle age, mortality continues to fall at about 2% a year. And in America, that stopped happening. We tried to dig deeper to find out what the heck is going on here. And what we're finding is that for every successive birth cohort, so people born, say, in 1960 relative to 1950, or 1980 relative to 1970, what we call deaths of despair, deaths from suicide, from drug overdose, from alcohol-related liver diseases, are on the upswing, and each successive birth cohort looks like they're at higher risk.
There really is a decline of the American working class, which it reached its heyday with the blue-collar aristocrats of the early 1970s with good union jobs and a job you could get where you got on the promotion line and you got a promotion every year and you built a middle-class life for yourself and your family, and that gave a whole mode of existence, which was very important to people. And achieving that mode of existence has become harder and harder.
The popular press has been saying that this is a rural problem, or this is a problem in Appalachia. And indeed, that is true, but by geography, this is happening throughout the U.S. Mortality rates overall are rising in almost every state. New Jersey, New York, California being the only exceptions. So this is a problem in cities, it's a problem in suburbs, it's a problem in rural areas. And the people who are really getting hammered are people with less education. It's almost as if now there are two Americas, one for people who went to college and one for people who didn't. And it's
Hi, my name is Hannah Brown, and this is my Vista print collection.
It's a small and rare decline in the life expectancy for women, but the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says it's extremely significant. The life expectancy of white, non-Hispanic women in the U.S. dipped from 81.2 years to 81.1 years from 2013 to 2014, according to the CDC's National Center for Health Statistics. While it's only a fraction of a year, the CDC says it shows a bigger problem for a wealthy nation. A CDC demographer told the Washington Post the decline can in part be attributed to drug overdoses, smoking, alcohol, disease, and suicide. Increases in suicide, chronic liver disease, and unintentional poisonings were so large that they had a negative effect on life expectancy. The report showed bad news for white females, but relatively good news for other demographics. Hispanics and blacks both saw gains in life expectancy. The numbers for white males stayed the same. For Newsy, I'm Matt Moreno.
So your white female population has dropped. So
Ryan Cooper has a really interesting piece over at theweek.com. You'll recall back, I think it was Tuesday this week, I was talking about how middle-aged, middle-class white men are committing suicide and dying from alcoholism and drug addiction at a rate that is causing the death rate for the entire cohort of white men from roughly 35 to 60, or 35 to 54, as I recall, was the age range, is causing their death rate to go up in ways that we haven't seen since the collapse, in any demographic like that, since the collapse of the Soviet Union. For a couple of years there after the collapse of the Soviet Union, similarly, you saw men dying like this for this reason, and it was, because of economic uncertainty. But Ryan, and the thing that I had missed in my analysis of this, I talked about racism. I talked about how, my dad had that white middle class dream, of when he came back from World War II, getting a job in a tool and die shop and getting a home in a suburb with the GI Bill and all these things that most African Americans were blocked from in the 50s. And my point was, we need to be sure, if we're going to put this economy back together, if we're going to change our trade policies, if we're going to bring our factories home, if we're going to put our cities back to work, that we do so in a way that's colorblind, or to the extent it can be, that is all inclusive. Because by and large, the middle class boom in the 50s, we were a legally segregated society at that time. That boom was largely confined to white men about the age who are committing suicide now. And they're committing suicide because that future that they thought they had, that they grew up with, looking back on their parents, they don't have it. But Brian Cooper says poor white Americans are dying of despair and racism is to blame. And, I thought this was fascinating. He says, well, basically, that poverty he says, American poverty is increasingly brutal. Male wages in the bottom fifth of the income ladder, for instance, have fallen by over 30% since the late 60s, and inequality has exploded. These days, those in the top 1% capture virtually all economic growth. If you've ever listened to Bernie Sanders, you know that to be the case. But then it gets really interesting. He says, now, the reason that, okay, you've got that, and you've got all these white, quote, middle-class men, middle-aged middle-class men who, in a previous generation, right now at this point in their lives, would have been making, in today's dollars, $30,000, $40,000 a year. In some cases, much more than that, $50,000, $60,000 a year. In some cases, and say even $70,000 in some of the more specialized factory jobs. And now they're laid off. They don't have a job, and the social safety net in America is not strong enough to catch them. Right? Unemployment has been limited to a year in most places. The Republicans 2 years ago refused to extend long-term federal unemployment. It still has, it's still blocked. Welfare is only available for a maximum of 5 years. We are, 6 or 7 years into a Great Recession. And he points out that the reason why during the Clinton administration they cut back on welfare, during the Reagan administration they cut back on housing and education assistance, during just basically through this whole thing.
What's this?
Is that and why universities have become more expensive. They've done away with free education. Their disability insurance, unemployment insurance, all dialed back. No child allowance, no paid vacation, stuff like that. The reason all that stuff has gone away is because historically, the white people who are the majority of the voters voted against it because they believed, this is going back to Reagan's welfare queen thing, they believed that these welfare benefits were going to black people. And the white people were saying, we don't want to be paying taxes to be supporting a bunch of black freeloaders. And now the white people are in the position of needing those resources, and they're not there. Which is something African Americans could have told you for a long, long time. Not to mention that the jobs aren't there, which, has been the...
Boom. Boom. Coming from a white man himself saying it. This has happened to your children.
With Montana News, I'm Edward O'Brien. Livingston residents are meeting this evening to discuss 2 recent student suicides at Park High School. Gillen's parents filed suit against Livingston School District nearly 2 years ago, saying their son's classmates were relentlessly bullying him.
When I opened the door, I just remember seeing his hand laying there, and I was the only one small enough to fit through the cracks, and so when I did, he had a belt around his neck, and he had taken it, and he'd closed his door. My name is Caitlin Gillen, and my brother, Dion Eric Gillen, committed suicide on February 14th, 2016. Okay, so this was Dion's favorite sport, wrestling. He was really good at what was called the head and arm, and even though all of the coaches told him not to get in it, they always somehow got caught. I don't remember writing this, but I said, "Brother, your life was ended too short, and no one has the right to be treated the way you were treated. You went through so much. Thank you for being the best brother in the world, even if I hated your guts sometimes. The world was your mat, and you wrestled hard. Until we are put on our backs, we will forever love you, sis." I think Dion often came to me, and I didn't know what suicide was. I didn't know what mental health was, and it was very scary because I didn't know how to help him. But there was a lot of sleepless nights where we would sleep by his door and sleep by his bed.
This is in Montana. They won't talk about this. Why is the White Pipe won't talk about this? But they too busy worried about people that look like us invading their space. Meanwhile,
Montanans like to think of themselves as being very unique, and they are in very, very many ways. But mental health is mental health, and there are different challenges for addressing mental health in different regions. But I think rural populations in general really struggle with a lot of the same things, which is high stigma, low mental health knowledge, and poor access to quality mental health care.
Dion was receiving counseling. We received family counseling together, and so it was between the counselors and my parents and the school when they decided what level of treatment he needed. There was only so much that the counselors could do because they were in Bozeman, so that was a 30-minute drive.
All of our counties in Montana are either rural or frontier, I think, except for one or two.
Other states, I think, tend to have a lower threshold for intervention with kids, whereas here they simply can't because there is no option. I mean, if the state at the state level intervenes with a child here, what are they going to do with that child when they're in the middle of nowhere?
Wow.
Hey folks, Chris James here from Paradigm Outdoors. Today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the Carbon Express Destroyer family of arrows.
We've been focusing on the drug plague and really should be looking more often at the suicide rates because that is going through the roof, ladies and gentlemen. Rise in suicide rates haunts rural areas. And this is an article that came out on October 10th, 2017. And I will leave the link to this article in the description box. While suicide rates have increased across the United States, the highest percentage are in rural counties. A new CDC report reveals the differential may reflect not only economic factors, but also insufficient access to mental health treatment in rural areas, experts say. Overall, suicide death rates for rural counties nationally is 17.32 per 100,000 people. Were higher than medium, small metropolitan counties, 14.86, and large metropolitan counties, 11.92. The CDC reported late last week. Dr. W. Vaughn McCall of the Medical College of Georgia at Augusta University said Monday that there's a growing disparity in the economic status of rural versus urban residents. There's a lack of access to mental health services of all kinds in the rural area, she added. McCall, an expert on suicide and chair of the Department of Psychiatry in health behavior at MGC, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the nation. There were more than 500,000 suicides during 2001 through 2015 period studied by the CDC. While we've seen many causes of death come down in recent years, suicide rates have increased more than 20% from 2001 to 2015. And this is especially concerning in rural areas. CDC Director Brenda Fitzgerald said in a statement, "We need proven prevention efforts to help stop these deaths and the terrible pain and loss they cause." Dr. Fitzgerald, a Georgia physician, recently took the CDC job after serving for years as commissioner of the State Department of Public Health. Overall, Georgia's suicide rate is about average compared with national statistics, but youth suicides in Georgia appear to show troubling trends. In May, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation said that up to that point, 18 children reportedly took their own lives this year. By June, the AJC reported 20 youths had taken their lives. The numbers show a potential record year for youth suicides in the state. Nationally, the suicide rate among girls between the ages of 15 and 19 reached a 40-year high in 2015. The Georgia Department of Public Health reported that in 2015, 1,274 people died from suicide, a slightly higher number than the previous year. Bonnie Moore, an advocate of the Floyd County Suicide Prevention Coalition, said Northwest Georgia has a high suicide rate compared with other areas of the state. A lot of it has to do with untreated mental health issues, Moore said. The rural areas, it is harder to get services. Dr. Gene Sumner, Dean of the Mercer University School of Medicine in Macon, said that Georgia is in desperate need of mental health professionals, especially in rural areas. The economic hardship in some rural areas contributes to the hopelessness, she said. In some places, there's less ability to earn an income. Lack of transportation can also be a barrier to receive medical services, Sumner added, but she noted that rural health care has become more urgent for policymakers and legislators in Georgia. That's a positive sign for change, Sumner said. She and McCall are strong proponents of telepsychiatry, through which psychiatric assessments and care delivered through video conference. In her place in Wrightsville and Sandersville, Sumner said, it worked extremely well for patients. Sumner said that to improve rural health care, every county have EMS services stationed within its boundaries. And more social services should be available for older patients so they can avoid isolation, which can become a risk factor for suicide. We need more preliminary care physicians in Georgia, Sumner said. The CDC report also said the national situation across metropolitan and rural areas, suicide rates for males were 4 to 5 times higher than for females during the study period. Suicide rates for Black, non-Hispanic, in rural areas were consistently lower than suicide rates for Black, non-Hispanic, and urban areas. White, non-Hispanic have the highest suicide rates in metropolitan counties, while American Indian, Alaska, Native, non-Hispanic have the highest rates in rural counties. Those are probably $5 Indians, y'all. They're probably the same people, just $5 Indians. The trend in suicide rates by sex, race, ethnicity, age, and mechanism that we see in the general population are magnified in rural areas, said Dr. James Mercy, director of the CDC's Division of Violence.
And just to see what she talking about, we gonna go to some rural areas where this happened.
By broadly accessing the industry's latest genetics and traits, we only recommend the best.
If a farmer can just stop and just talk to anybody, if you can't talk to your wife or your significant other, talk to a salesman, talk to anybody. But anything's better than having the family go through what we've had to go through.
One of the reasons the suicide rate is so high in farming is their general stress levels are really high. Think of how it would be if your great-grandfather owned the farm, and then your grandfather owned it after that, and then your father owned it after that, and now you're going to lose it. So now not only have they lost the farm, but they've lost their identity.
My husband Larry, he was 6'6", big guy, always was telling a joke, always was very animated. He was very gracious and he's very creative. We never had any money, so anytime it came to a gift or an anniversary gift or something, he'd go out to the garden and pick the flowers from my garden, and then he'd make up a poem, or he'd recite it, or he'd write music, or he'd write a song or something. But he didn't share his real intimate thoughts. At the time when Larry was kind of really feeling pretty frustrated, I was working full-time. I was also going to school, finishing my 4-year degree, and I was leaving the farm every day. And Larry wasn't leaving the farm. I mean, he was here. And hindsight's 20/20. When I think back, I had no clue that he was to that point. I went to work on that Friday morning, and Larry always called at 9:30. And that day he didn't call. I couldn't breathe because I kept thinking, this isn't happening to me. This can't be happening to me or my kids. As I'm driving, I see the rescue squad coming into Watkins, and they don't have any lights on. And so that I know that he must have died.
Okay.
It took 3 years before I had all the cattle gone, and then we had the machinery auction, and after 3.5 years, then we finally had everything liquidated and taken care of. There was all kinds of people that helped me. I was put in touch with Ted Matthews, who helped me those 4 months. He was a real guy who understood farmers and understood farm life and respected it, but yet at the same time wanted you to understand how it could really suck you in and drain you completely dry.
I started working with farmers in 1993, and I just became Ted, and it was always just the concept of, let's call Ted. Ted knows more about this than I do. I'm the only one in the country that does what I do. I get all kinds of phone calls every day, and they run the gamut from a person who calls and says, I have problems with my finances, do you know who I can call? Calls from wives who say, my husband just won't talk to me, he doesn't communicate. And it's hard because they've been taught So they have isolation issues. Who do they talk to? Well, their dad didn't talk, their grandpa didn't talk, their uncles didn't talk, so they don't either. And most farmers have no concept of what they can do outside of farming. It just doesn't exist for them.
Birth injury cases are unique because of the gravity and the unexpected nature.
It really embodies, look, you know, whatever the world can throw at me, I can find my way through this. But suicide and mental health are things that you may not be able to just kind of pull yourself up by the bootstraps and see your way through.
With this culture, it can be a bit like the fact you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
It's my job then to put water everywhere I can. I can make enough resources available to them that at least they know where to find it.
And many who know the depths of suicide firsthand refuse to treat it as a foregone conclusion.
It's like you living in this negative, I guess, self-made hell.
Jason Whitmire attempted suicide some 10 years ago. He now works with Lance on the task force to stop others from doing the same.
I would imagine that there's a bond that you would have with people that know these dark depths.
Yeah, there is. But you don't get that feeling until you know their story. You can't bond if you don't know what they're into.
That's something Lance Nyberger still thinks about when he reflects on the loss of his son.
He didn't feel comfortable enough to come to me and say, Dad, life's kicking my butt. I'm really struggling here. And at the time of his death, when he needed me the most, I wasn't there for him because we were going in opposite directions instead of working together.
The messages that you give to someone who's lost someone close to them, that kindness that you extend to help them deal with that, do you extend the same kindness to yourself?
I've gotten better at it. For about 6 months, I didn't care whether I lived or died. It wasn't until our daughter gave birth about 7, 8 years ago to our granddaughter, I really realized what I would have missed had I not lived back then.
Wyoming has been referred to as just a small town with unusually long streets, and here everyone seems to know someone who's dealt with suicide. For Lance, there's both horror and strength in that sentiment, that everybody is dealing with something. That pain is a universal burden we carry. But what Lance has learned is with a little effort and an open heart, it's possible to help others lighten the load.
It used to come out quite a bit right after his death. You realize that a sudden death like this, you can just wipe out everything else.
Sad case, sad case. So, now this is my response to this. You know, I don't take no glory in seeing anybody that take life on either hand. But the fear and insecurity of some white people do not like to address their own problems. Why everybody looking to the blacks, they're not really thinking about they're not thinking about, see, this thing is coming around, and no one takes joy in seeing someone lose their life. But you see, pain goes in all directions. It does. Just like those young men that disappeared in that sundown town, they go through towns like these little towns in Montana and Wyoming and in Illinois, and they disappear, and the relatives don't feel that pain. But in the same pain that these families feel when they when their loved ones take their own life, and you see the white population is dropping. It has nothing to do with a race war. It has something to do with what comes around retribution. And maybe those people probably who lost their lives probably wouldn't like that. But there's some people in those towns are like that. and they have to see the reality of it. Chaos, pain, and hurt don't care where you go. It does not care. But now you see a human factor to it. You see that what racism has caused. While people too busy looking at another group of people, they need to be looking at themselves. While you're too busy worrying about what these other people do, you need to look at your own community and figure out what's going on. Because mixing out or racing out, whatever, your race is already taking itself out. Not by the hands of another man, but by the hands of their own self. I don't like, this is nothing to glorify in. But you see how the things that happen in America, and some people be in agreement with things in areas, these little towns, that there's repercussion to it. Alcohol, suicides. Why don't the white community ever address about this? Why are they so busy demonizing other communities? Why demonize immigrants, blacks, and everything else when they have a whole population of suffering? Why is that? Why is that they're not addressing this issue? Why there's a human factor in here. Pain is losing a loved one, no matter what race of people is an equally painful factor. But see, just like the injustice and insecurity of racists and bigots, this has happened where the racists and bigots are at. It's in their towns. See, you see what the injustices of past time has fallen on the curses of these generations of people. There were once black farmers that had and they were literally unalive on their own farms, driven off their land. Now, generations later, the white farmers are suffering the thing that maybe it might not have been in their family. They might not be in their town. They might be the ones, but the repercussion of what a selective group have done, backed by the government have caused people to suffer in these areas. Because they die in neglect. These are white people that are doing this. You don't hear too many black farmers taking themselves out. In fact, they won't give funding to black farmers like the white farmers. In the past would. See what they done? And it's hitting them. It's hitting them hard. It's sad, and I don't take no joy in this, but you have to reap there's some people reaping what they sow from the ancestors. You reap what you sow. It's a horrible thing to see that happen. But you see how one group think they gain up by collectively, thinking that they're going to outpopulate, but really their population is suffering. It's not by race, not by weapons, by spiritual warfare up in here. Cause suicide and drugs. Maybe people in general need to think about this. Maybe those people out in these rural sundown towns need to think about this, because this can be one of their relatives who perpetuate the hate on other people, the division on other people. This could be one of your relatives that look like you. This could be one of your cousins that look like you, white people. The population is not dropping because of that. It's the drop population because the idiots don't see the whole picture. That's why I did do these videos. Is to wake up. If I'm going to get on my own people, I'm going to get on like anybody else. Now it's time to focus back on you. Stop trying to look to another group and look to another group. For some of you that look to another group to put the blame on, you have to put the focus back on you. You have to be self-accountable. You have to repent and redeem yourself. Some of you have to get it right. this is addressed to you. This is not out of mean hatred, but you guys see what's really going on with people that look like you. Why they improvise look. Oh, it's the blacks and brown people. They don't tell you about this area. They don't tell you about rural America. They don't tell you about the suburbs. Because your media makes it look, that makes you think that they're getting, that one's getting ahead. It's probably going all the way up to the White House. And the president don't even know this. Because he's trying to make it more white people. That's why some white people are leaving. Because it's not because of other people. It's because they've taken out their own hands like any other people. Self out. Because they can't cope with the pressures of life. I hope this video been inspiring. So it's not to cause no racial division, separate, anything like that. It's just a wake-up call to white people. Some of them need to focus on their problems. And stop trying to make TikTok videos attacking other groups of people and making insinuate things and trying to worry about your family, your cousins in your town and your cities next, because they're going through it. White men, white women, and white children. Think about it. Alright then, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you like the video. Hope this be eye-opening. And maybe by the grace of God, some people come together, and this don't apply to all white people. It's the ones who are racist that don't see this as coming. This don't apply to all white people. Some of you don't apply to, but those of you who have a connection with God, he's showing you what's happening. And it's really happening. And people that look like your family, your extended family, people you grew up with, you never know what's going on out there. Everything in hunky-dory. Alright then, take care, be blessed. See you on the next video.